today from Black Facts Headquarters Central with another installment of Doc Ock at noon and 9. Matter of fact, this is live stream number 400. That's right. We're coming 400 strong from the end of April, end of March, early April, all the way through till almost the end of November. 400 live streams, 2 a day, every single day without fail. That's been our job here. We had no idea it was going to last this long. We thought maybe a few here or there, but we had no idea it would go on for nearly a year, half a year at this point. So we're going to be taking a break here on December the 30th. That'll be our last live stream for the year 20. That'll be our last live stream in this series. I put it that way. That'll be the last live stream in this series for the year 2020. But we will be doing some reprises while we go into the studio and begin to edit down the all of the contributions that have been made by the alumni of Kent and friends and family of Dr. Crosby. We really appreciate you all donating and spending your time with us to tell your part, to add your part, add your piece of the puzzle to the story of Dr. Crosby, the Black United Students, Kent State University, the Institute for African American Affairs. How did that whole confluence come about? And what has it wrought? Which is really key. What has it wrought? Because we've interviewed people that have operated billion-dollar businesses to people that are just neighborhood people, work at schools in the area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But overall, the Dr. Crosby's program was very successful, which you all already know for the most part. Those of you that don't know, you can do a rewind and go back into YouTube or into Facebook and go back to the very first live stream that we did relating as we began to read from Dr. Crosby's autobiography, which we're going to continue doing today. Okay, so for right now, let's continue on and go ahead with our proverb of the day, which is the most beautiful fig may contain a worm. The most beautiful fig may contain a worm. And that's a proverb from Zulu land. Poem for the day is River of Bones and Flesh and Blood by poet Eugene Redmond. River of Bones and Flesh and Blood. And it's from the book The Eye in the Ceiling, which is a compilation of selected poems by Eugene Redmond. So let's go ahead and get on with the getting on. Our time is somewhat limited today. River of bones and flesh and blood, meaning Mississippi. For Doris Cason, river of time, vibrant vein, bent, crooked, older than the red men who named you, ancient as the winds that break on your serene and shining face. One-time western boundary of America, from whose center your broad shoulders now reach to touch sisters on the flanks. River of truth, mornings you leap, yawn 2,000 miles and shed a giant joyous tear over sprouting, straggling hives of humanity. Nights you weep as the moon tiptoeing across your silent, silky face hears you praying over the broken backs of black slaves who rode crouched and huddled at your heart in the bellies of steamships. River of memory, laboratory for Civil War boat builders who left huge eyes of steel staring from your sullen depths, reluctant partner to crimes of Ku Klux Klansmen. River moved to waves of ecstasy by the venerable trumpet of Louis Armstrong. River of bones and flesh and blood, the nation's largest intestine and longest conveyor belt. River Mississippi, that's Mississippi, the only English language that's got 4 Y's and still can't see. River of little rivers, river of rises, sometimes subdued by a roof of ice, descending finally on your southward course to spit into the Gulf and join the wrath of larger bodies. River Mississippi, that river along which my father toiled at EHE, the Experiment in Higher Education. That river that we used to cross and see the huge arch going across the downtown area of St. Louis, MO, Missouri, that is. And it's got its own MO. But we won't go into that because that'll take us all over into Staggered Lee territory. And we ain't going there today. You want to know about Staggered Lee, refer back to one of our previous live streams. But in the meanwhile, we're going all the way down to Mississippi, through Mississippi, over into Alabama to Tuskegee Institute, where the school that are best known by its most famous leader, Booker T. Washington. Not Booker Washington, Booker T, because you can't forget the T. His mama gave him that third name for a reason, because it's so pleasing. She didn't just stick it in there by accident to be dropped whenever you get ready to. Booker T's Tuskegee Institute. Dr. Crosby had been suggested, his name had been put into a pot to be hired at Tuskegee Institute. Booker Taliaferro Washington, an African-American who had been born a slave, became a dominant Black educator, author, orator, and advisor to U.S. Republican presidents on issues confronting the American Black community from 1890 until his death in 1915. His influence on Black people's affairs lasted for many years after his death. However, given the racist turmoil taking place throughout the South and North, for that matter, I felt I needed to experience the current racial turmoil in the South. Shirley was not as convinced as I was. My 3-year-old son, Michael, couldn't have cared less. Before long, I received an invitation to an interview with Dr. Sanders Walker, the one and only chair of Tuskegee's English and Modern Languages Department in Chicago at an MLA conference, that's the Modern Language Association. I mentioned to Dr. Walker I was still working on my dissertation and expected to finish it during my first year at Tuskegee. He assured me that would not be a problem. We went on asking more questions and giving more answers. After a not too much longer interview, he offered me a position teaching German and Spanish. Right then, I told Dr. Walker when it came to salary, I would accept $4,900, which was the 12-month salary I would have received in 9 months at Hiram. That was a mistake because I didn't ask what the teaching load at Tuskegee was, nor did I ask about the length of the Institute school year, or more specifically, how my salary would be computed. Those were serious mistakes on my part for Tuskegee's contract year, and therefore my salary were not clearly defined. And when I approached the administration, Tuskegee's vice president reluctantly offered me an unrealistic resolution to the problem, which forced me into employing a subterfuge, of which I wasn't very proud, but so be it. I had only been working full-time in academia for 2 years and thought all colleges and universities operated similarly. When it came to the contract year, for instance, at Hiram and Kent State, faculty salaries were based on 9 months. However, the salary was divided into 12 equal payments. The result being, you did not have to seek employment over the 3-month summer vacation if you didn't want or need to. Had I asked Dr. Walker, I would have learned Tuskegee's contracts were for 11 months, without exception. Had Dr. Walker been on top of his game, or had I not been a neophyte and being interviewed, I would have inquired about Tuskegee's contract year and how my salary would be affected. That would have avoided the situation that ensued. As it turned out, I learned all faculty were obligated to teach summer school to earn their full year 11-month salary. So I started teaching at the Institute, not knowing I had a serious salary problem coming on. My wife Shirley had no aversions and could handle living in the South. Her parents were native Southerners. She had regularly visited her grandparents and other relatives in Atlanta during the summers when she was younger and when schools in Cleveland were not in session. On occasion, she and her family, including relatives and at times family friends, would attend family reunions in Atlanta. She knew the Southern Black culture and how to navigate the white culture there as well. White people were the same all over. The only difference in the South being their penchant towards violence against Black people was more easily aroused than in the North, particularly in the 50s. It may be needless to point out, but these were troubling times in Alabama and the South in general. When we arrived in Alabama, I had to learn to control my mouth. Some time ago, when my parents and I were going to visit my brother in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, a few miles from the border of Tennessee, I was driving at the age of 17 or 18. I was driving. I had a youthful liking for being smart alecky at the wrong time and place. As I drove the car closer to Fort Campbell in Tennessee, I noticed we needed to fill up. So I was directed to pull into the next filling station. When the attendant came, I announced flippantly, "Fill her up and don't spill any on the car." My father almost died on the spot, but he kept his cool until after the tank was filled and I drove off. My mother remained silent. Then the storm raged. I can't repeat everything my father said. I do remember, however, that he called me everything but a child of God. I said I was sorry, but that wasn't enough. My father knew we were approaching the South, something I had so stupidly not recognized. All of his memories as a boy in the South returned. All those countless times he had been instructed not to show the least amount of anything that might be considered disrespectful towards white folks, especially white women. Indeed, Daddy must have witnessed or heard of tragic and brutal lynchings of other Black youths and adults when he was young in the South. Louisiana lynchings were common in the South then, and he didn't want to see another now. Well, I had never been so trained. This was the first time I'd ever been close to a Southern state. Oh, my mother had tried to train me and my brothers and sisters not to be disrespectful to any people, white or Black. and especially not to their elders. I witnessed my brother Richard receiving a solid blow from her when he made a disparaging remark to one of her friends who was visiting at the time. I suffered through my comeuppance and remembered it when my wife and son were driving through Arkansas, then Mississippi, and finally Alabama on our way to Tuskegee in 1962. We weren't coming at the time from Ohio, straight south. We were actually coming in from Kansas. So you had to go through Mississippi to get to Tuskegee, to get to Alabama. I had just finished my studies for the PhD that summer at the University of Kansas. Indeed, when we traveled through Missouri and left Arkansas, my wife and I became silent when we entered Mississippi and hoped we didn't have to buy any gas until we reached Alabama, forgetting that Alabama was just as bad, if not worse. We referred to the combination as Alamissy and assiduously structured the attention we paid to people and happenings around us accordingly. At any rate, Shirley and I enjoyed living and teaching in Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. My experiences working with my students in Alabama were fulfilling. My relations with faculty and some administrators presented some difficulties. However, this was particularly evident when it came to some older Southern-born faculty. I was invited to a faculty and staff social after I had been on the campus maybe a month. At this social, I was introduced to several individuals, and we had some very interesting conversations. On one occasion, I was talking to an older woman, a faculty member, who was informing me about her experiences teaching at Tuskegee. Then after a short while, she addressed me as Dr. Crosby. At first, I thought I should ignore it, but I decided to correct her politely, letting her know I didn't yet have a doctorate degree, but that it was on its way. This revelation apparently stunned her so much, she immediately cut our conversation short and walked off. This abrupt closure puzzled me at first. Then I realized my not having a doctorate had violated a class issue. This was my first introduction to a piece of some Black academics culture in the South 52 years ago. I came from a family and community that respected people, particularly Black people who had achieved some status due to their advanced age or some other mark of distinction, such as being a doctor, a college professor, dentist, teacher, postal clerk, or politician. On occasion, distinction was also conferred on those who held status in the underground economy, such as successful numbers runners or bookies like my dad. But this distinction didn't allow them to diminish others. At the Tuskegee Institute, they had developed an active class culture. This culture, it seemed, had originated back when Booker T. Washington was alive and dominant. Dr. Walker and his wife, despite his quirks, were highly regarded members of Tuskegee's supposed, quote-unquote, upper crust, end quote, which proceeded from the fact Mrs. Walker was the sister of Dr. Rufus Early Clement, president of Atlanta University. In 1937, Dr. Rufus E. Clement became president of the Atlanta University system, which included Spelman, Morehouse, and of course, Atlanta U. He became the longest serving president of Atlanta University, serving from 1937 to 1957 and from 1966 to 1967. Dr. Clement was the author of many articles on African American history, politics, and education. When Dr. Clement was elected to the Atlanta Board of Education in 1953, he became the first African American elected to public office in Atlanta since the Reconstruction era. So we're going to end right there, and we'll pick up with a at the soiree. Gonna pick up at the soiree tomorrow. Meanwhile, we're gonna all do it with style. We're gonna do it with class. We're gonna do it real slow, and then we might do it kind of fast. But we're gonna do it good in any case, like we always should. And you are gonna do the same. Don't be a lame. Go ahead and contribute to our 2020 campaign, which ends on December 20. Make a donation today. Do it right now. Don't wait till later, because later won't be greater. You're not going to be feeling any straighter. Why wait till put off till later what you can do right now? Just click the link below. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, go to our website, www.blakfacts.org, and you can make a donation there, or you can join our Amazon Smile campaign and direct Amazon to donate to Black Facts Educational Research Incorporated without it costing you a dime. So there's at least 3 different ways that you can donate money to Black Facts. In the meantime, we're going to leave you with a smile for a while. We'll be black tonight at 9. Peace out without a doubt, y'all.